Hello everyone, this is Bill Meridian speaking to you about Mayor Mamdani and the Big Apple, my former hometown. It's on April 7th, 2026. I'm speaking to you from Vienna, Austria. Again, we have the old website, billmeridian.com, the new one, billmeridianastrology.com if you want to stop in. So, Mayor Mamdani, I picked up this time from the internet. I haven't had much of a chance to rectify it, but I think it's approximately correct, as we'll see as we go through this. First of all, you talk about one very smart guy. Mercury conjunct the asteroid Pallas, Mercury conjunct Mars. Mars-Mercury is, I have this too, someone who wants to figure it out, someone who's very quick mentally. The guy's probably very excellent at table tennis or ping pong, anything with his fast movement. They love to figure things out, and it gives them a very energetic means of speaking. And of course, Pallas, Mercury Pallas, someone who's pretty, I think, ingenious with any new technology, using the internet for mercurial or communicative reasons. And of course, Mars Mercury can always lose your temper pretty easily when he's agitated, which wouldn't be too hard to do. And his Mars is square Saturn, right on the seventh house cusp, if this birth time for Kampala, Uganda is right. But what is really interesting is his sun is conjunct the Iranian planet Poseidon, and that has to do with its basic essence is enlightenment. But if it's afflicted, for example, we see here Mars conjunct Poseidon. Now, my old pal Faith McInerney in New York did a study of Mars Poseidon and found these are people who can be very violent or very aggressive in pursuit or in promotion of some belief system. And it's Poseidon at its highest nature is enlightenment. It is my Zen master had this very strong in his chart. At its lower level, it's propaganda. And of course, he's got Sun, Apollon. They're pretty far apart, but Apollon would make him widespread. This gives him his appeal. This is all the third house. So very perceptive, very able to use social media, aggressive in his speaking, someone who probably likes debates, and all the planets are at the bottom of the chart. Jupiter is conjunct Vesta. They're both trine the midheaven, which is Taurus, which is my sun degree up here. And the moon in Aquarius, which means his wife is quite a bit of, can be quite an assist to him, but he does have moon square Pluto. And I think we'll get into this in a few minutes. He'll have a lot of difficulty. His wife is going to be somewhat troublesome to him, and so will the people who work for him, the sixth house. Now, they purport to be fighting for the people who can't fend for themselves, people who are down and out, children, women. That's Juno here at 20 Capricorn. But we also have Neptune here, Neptune node. So I think there is going to be, at some point, his wife will be a problem, and there's fraud taking place in his office of people who are working for him, which we are going to see as we move forward. So one last look at this to see if there's a lot I could say, but I also wanted to point out that this is Admetos. This is the Iranian planet. Saturn is real estate. Admetos is geology. So if someone has a drilling and tunneling company, they have a strong Admetos. If someone is hiding somewhere, being secluded, strong Admetos. If you're living in a monastery and you're secluded, that's a strong Admetos. It rules what is under the ground. Now, what is under New York City but the subway system? And I think during his reign, there's going to be some problem, either a terrorist attack or there'll be some major malfunction of the transportation system of the city of New York. And this is the world, this is 45 degrees to 0 Aries, which is the world point. So any planets at 15 fixed equal the world points. So it's not too easy to hide this. It comes right out into the public if it's at the world point. And it is square the moon and opposite Pluto. Remember I mentioned potential problems with females, probably his wife. So let's go one step forward. Now, here's where Mamdani took office. January 1, 2026, just past midnight. And what do we have up here but Hades, the Uranian planet, at the top of the chart. That's so the big snowfall being covered would be Admetus in the 10th here. Not picking up the trash and the rats is Hades. So I don't think this is going to be a very successful administration. The rest of these planets, in case you wonder, Hades is the lower self. It's the part of you that would like to go out and bop somebody over the head and just take their stuff, take their gold chain. Uh, Kronos is the higher part of the nature. Now, these two were conjunct on the horoscope of the USA, and what did we have? We had Hades on the sun, a deteriorating president who left office, and now we've got a very authoritative one, which is Kronos. But this group right here, if you read Jupiter, Kronos, Hades, right out of the book, it will say theft from or destruction of wealthy. Wealthy is Jupiter. Elite people who are high up is Kronos. Hades, he's chasing the wealthy, he and the governor, out of the city. That's what his administration will be known for. That's the 10th house. Opposite, this is Mars and the Sun. Now Mars, Hades, right out of the book, I have it strong in my chart, is murder. And it's a violent, destructive, aggressive energy. And it is conjunct the Sun. It is also near Venus, Cupido. The Venus and Mars Sun, read alone, let's say there's some sex appeal in this administration. But with Mars thrown in there, I think that the crime rate, the murder rate, will rise under his administration. And in addition to that, you will see here on in the 6th house, we see Saturn and Neptune, and I think that, again, is the people who work for him are going to be somewhat disappointing, or there's going to be a big disappointment in his administration. So what else can I tell you about this? Let's go, we can always bop back to this one. But Saturn, Neptune, Sirius in the sixth house, the house of the services, the police, the fire department, emergency services, they are all going to be very disappointed, I think, by this administration. And in fact, they are square Juno, and Juno is conjunct Mercury. I think these minorities and people who are in need, as represented by Juno, will wind up very disappointed. Mercury, Saturn, Neptune. Saturn, Neptune, deflation of Saturn, of dreams, Neptune. Now, if we relocate Mamdani to New York City, what do we get? A packed 7th house. His sun is practically on the descendant. This is what you would see in the horoscope of somebody who wants to be on stage. So if he wants to get his message across, he is certainly in the right place. But Hades is now down in the 2nd house. The wealthy people are fleeing. They're all headed down to Miami. And you will see his midheaven has fallen into a key axis here. His midheaven is conjunct Neptune, opposite Vulcanus. That can be read as big fraud. And it is square Apollon in the 6th house. Remember I said this earlier. So Neptune, midheaven, can be great for sales. It can be great for spreading the word. It would be great if this were horoscope of someone who's in the advertising business. Neptune is the creation of the image. Vulcanus makes it very powerful. Square Apollon makes it very widespread. So it's a great place for him to spread his belief system and his propaganda. And the ruler of the 10th is right in the 10th. Saturn is at 0, Aquarius 19. I don't regard this as being very good for adopting new technologies and And the Mars-Saturn square is now angular. So I think Mars-Saturn can be very cruel. It can be very cold. I think this is now obvious for people to see. And remember Admetos in the 10th house at birth? There was a big snowfall, and they found under that frozen people. He rescinded the police order that authorizes police or commands them to take homeless people in off the streets into shelters, and I think about 18 people froze to death. That's Admetus, buried under snow and freezing to death. And this was something everybody saw because the Mars Saturn is angular. So there's a lot I could say about this, but I mean, you're talking about speaking and spreading the word. Look at that, 7th house. All those planets have shifted from the 3rd in Uganda up to the 7th. But this 6th house is somewhat of a worry, I do think. Now, if we go to the 90-degree dial and we put the pointer on the sun, what do we get? We get node Neptune over here, Mercury, Pallas, MC over here. So node Neptune, very frequently this can be close personal associates who you rely on. That's the node. Involved with Neptune means they can be deceptive or they can be poor and down and out and come looking for a handout, something like that. It can work, or you may, to look at it from its most positive sense, you have close personal friends through your Neptunian pursuits, which could be spiritual pursuits. It may be friends you meet in yoga, things like that. But Mercury, now we have Mercury here, Pallas midheaven. Neptune midpoint is right on the sun. So that's why this Pallas, I hedged on this a little bit because I saw this. He can use this mental ability to proselytize or to paint an image to people that is not altogether true, and it does equal Venus. And I think if you count here, 1, 2, 2 well, it's not quite a complete planetary picture, but you have Hades here and Juno over here. That's sort of a planetary picture that I think is out of orb. So that's one planetary picture. Here is another one. If you put the pointer, that pointer is his relocated New York City midheaven on the 90-degree dial. So as you can see, it pulls right into Neptune, Node, Apollon. Now over here, the point I wanted to make, say, well, here's Zeus, Mars, Saturn's right over here. Zeus, industry and initiative, Mars, Saturn, discourage it so that they leave. But here you have, and this is very important, Vesta, Neptune, both about a half degree. Equal openings always mean planetary pictures. So it is Vesta, Neptune equals the New York City midheaven. Neptune Vesta is strong in the horoscopes of Charles Ponzi and Bernie Madoff, as well as many other crooks on Wall Street or crooks in general. It is false Neptune or fraudulent documents or paper Vesta. When I was a very basic student of astrology in New York, Eleanor Box's Vesta bill, that's investments. That's true. So this could be a bond salesman or somebody who sells stock, but it shows up frequently in frauds, as evidenced by the charts of Ponzi and Madoff. So I think you're looking at there'll be a major scandal here somewhere along the lines. Maybe not perpetrated by him, but those people close to him or his close associates who take advantage of their association with him, and they take advantage of the position of power that they're in. So right now, it's a good time to do this analysis because Pluto is moving up to square that Kampala birth time midheaven, which is 4 fixed. Pluto is square that degree from Aquarius. And in fact, it will be stationary direct square that degree in October, middle of October, October 16th, and that will be square midheaven, square Mars, and Pluto will also be square Mercury, August the 20th and December the 9th. Not good. Pluto square the midheaven, you're conflicting with powers that be. This is probably Washington, D.C., and maybe even Albany. The authorities are arrayed against you, and they have more money or more leverage than you do, particularly when the city you're running is broke. So that's a tough one. And if we relocate and we go to the New York City midheaven, we have Saturn square the New York City midheaven for the first time July 6, 2026, extending right into March of 2027. Saturn will go stationary retrograde in later July. It'll be exactly square the MC and 135 degrees to Vesta, square Neptune and 75 to Saturn. Saturn and Neptune, as I've said in another video, is frauds. If you trace the history of scandals in the United States, we just had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. We've got Jeffrey Epstein, fraud in California, fraud in Minnesota. I don't know how many more frauds there could be, but it's the peak in the fraud thermometer, if you could visualize that. So Saturn is squaring his midheaven in New York City. Pluto is squaring his birth midheaven. Saturn and Pluto together usually means you have to cut budgets. You have to cut back to the bare essentials. Budget is not going to be balanced. So this might get him in a lot of trouble. And of course, what would be worse is Saturn square Uranus, which starts May 10th, October 19th, January 31st, 2027, Saturn square Uranus. Trying to fix things with Saturn square Uranus is difficult. I know, I just went through it. It means technical breakdowns, things going wrong, things that you just don't anticipate. And where is Aquarius in this chart? The 11th house. Again, his friends are not going to be much help to him. And let's look at there's the 5th house. It rules the 5th house, Uranus does, in his birth chart. And so popularity is going to start to wane here. Saturn will oppose the progressed Venus starting in June and running right through to the following March. Saturn will be exactly square Neptune June 29th, the last thing you want when you are in financial difficulty. So this all says to me inability to balance the budget, to cut spending, so being forced into doing it and losing your popularity, and the big boys are not going to come and help you. Pluto is not saying that. In fact, Neptune will start to square his Pluto, which means they won't even be very clear with him. And the only positive thing I see here is July, when Jupiter is contraparallel to progressed Sun, but that's not enough to offset all the difficulties here. In July, Pluto is parallel progressed Uranus and square the midheaven. Pluto-Uranus, right out of the book, is drastic change in financial condition, and it is afflicting the midheaven. So I think the city, it will be in the headlines, I think in the summer, that my old home city, the Big Apple, will be in rotten financial shape. And then July 26, Saturn goes stationary retrograde, square Neptune, and will stay there till March 10th. That is deflationary. That is going to be no help. And then August 12th, there is an eclipse, 90 degrees to Pluto. That'll be the eclipse in August at 20 Leo. And let me just tell you about eclipse Pluto. Eclipse was right on the Pluto of Richard Fuld, who was the boss of Lehman Brothers when they collapsed. That eclipse was right on his Pluto. That company was very overextended by 7 for 1. In other words, they had $7 in liabilities for every $1 they had in assets. Can it get worse? Yeah, Pluto squares his Mercury August 20th. And there are 5 squares. He's already had 3. The last one I think is December 9th. And stationary direct, Pluto will square the midheaven Mars. It'll afflict the Mercury. Pluto-Mercury I was born with the square, and I've always been in industries in which I have to keep my mouth closed about financial information. Mercury, Pluto, if you have this and you say, I'm going to let you in on something, don't tell anybody. I guarantee you in Gold Ink, they will tell people. Pluto is like a snowball at the top of a hill. As it rolls down, it gathers momentum, becomes an avalanche. So he's got to be keep close to his vest financial information. Now, his progressed sun will be 45 degrees to Neptune, which started having an effect, according to Charles Jane, if it's the progressed sun, because the semi-diameter of the sun is so great, it's about a 9-month orb going in. So, in other words, February, late February 2026, something started going on with him that will not culminate until November 27th, and it will persist for the 9 months after that. Sun Neptune, I think he is going to be tap dancing as fast as he can to try and keep the evidence of this financial situation under wraps. And then February 6, 2027, we have another solar eclipse. It is conjunct his moon, squares Pluto, as Uranus, on almost the same day, goes right over his progressed moon. So that is Moon, Uranus, Pluto eclipse. Remember I said his wife or some female could provide a great difficulty. And Pluto takes things out of control. It's you have no control over interest rates, no control over the waves on the beach, no control over the weather. So when Pluto gets involved, the matter is sort of taken out of your hands. And I think he is hitting his peak. There's a Dane Rudhyar style progressed full moon, December 26, 2026 at 29 Taurus 07. Progressed full moons in my life have been peaks of activity. So I think by December, first quarter of next year, a lot of people are going to look at him and say, this guy has fizzled out. His peak was he got to be mayor of New York. But things did not go too well and started to come apart at the seams. And as I said, here we have Hades in the 10th house in the horoscope set for his taking his office. We have Admetus in the 10th. That's underground. It could be pipes underground. It could be the immediately I just thought of the subway. Then will there be a subway strike? Maybe will somebody detonate a bomb in the underground, or will it just be a mechanical breakdown? Bad publicity, because that Admetus is equal to 0 Aries, which is the world point, by 45-degree axis. So it doesn't look too good for my hometown, and I feel very badly about that. And I'd say the greatest stress here is financial. And once again, it appears to be a very tough period into 2027. Financial stress, crime rate up, business down. That's all reflected in the charts. When you have a spare moment, come and look at the mundane book, Mastering Geopolitical Prediction, the old Predictive Power of Eclipse Paths. We have In Search 1 and In Search 2, reprints of Charles Jane's very heady and very academic 1958, 59, and 60. By that time, these chaps had rectified 3,000 charts and gleaned a lot of information that led to his teachings later on, and also planetary stock trading, planetary economic forecasting, cycles research, early warning service, and so on. It's been my pleasure. I got to go back to work in the stock market, and we'll see what happens shortly. Thank you so much for listening.